wounds we don't see, the hidden toll of bullying. Good morning. My name is Janine Cayetano, and welcome to Galen, the Galen podcast. Thank you. I just want to say thank you both for joining us today. And I want us to start by both of you introducing yourselves and sharing what connects you to today's topic of bullying.
Okay, good morning. My name is Miss Julissa Sierra Galvez. I'm a MSW student here at Galen. I believe what connects me to the topic of bullying is that it is such a universal issue. I feel like most people, if not all, experiences some type of bullying across their lifespan. I feel like it really does not discriminate, ironically. So it's very much experienced by all cultures. A lot of times it really doesn't matter where you're from. I feel like at some point, especially in childhood, a lot of people experience it, whether you're bigger, you're smaller. The color of your skin sometimes plays into effect, but I feel like it is just universal and a lot of people experience it. And it's very important to address because I feel like it just keeps getting worse. And so I think it's important to have conversations about bullying.
Good morning. I'm Afin Avila. I'm also a MSW student here at Galen. And bullying, like what Julissa said, is universal. What connects me is the fact that I'm also a vice principal, and I see daily how things, have been changing, and how people get affected by bullying. And it is a wide scope, and it's not only children, it's also adults. And so it is a great topic and one that we cannot just take and lay under a rug, because it's a serious matter and it affects the entire being. The entire being get affected when people is being bullied, or when someone get that, even if it's just a minimal experience, it can bring a wide effect, So that is what connects me.
Thank you both for sharing. As both of you previously mentioned, it's quite a universal topic. And just to repeat the topic for today, wounds we don't see. When you hear this statement, what comes to mind? What do you think about what this is saying?
For me, I definitely think it's about the invisible emotional impact of bullying and of the treatment that persons get when they're being bullied. A lot of the times, they may look okay on the outside, they may look fine, they may look normal, I guess you can say, but they're carrying deep hurt and a lot of emotions, negative emotions that they get after experiencing the short end of the stick after being bullied. And it happens a lot because we hear about physical, being beat up. You hear about, people hitting other persons. But then you also have the other aspect of it where it's the emotional side, the mental side that's affected. And so, we can't see half of the time, but that's what we are here to learn as well, in social work and in psychoeducation and stuff like that, being able to work with the stuff that we cannot see as well.
Afian, what does today's title, how would you interpret wounds we don't see? What does that mean to you when you hear it?
Well, actually, that's really intense, because sometimes seeing somebody is one thing, and some people can look very normal, they can look jovial, and they're going through a lot. And not having a conversation with that person on a certain level will never let you understand what that person is going through. And in our culture, we learn about silence, right? They teach us to be silent. And people carry these trauma and be silent with bullying. And I believe this is history. It's from history back in the days. It's just something that we get accustomed to, and we say, well, it's okay. So we carry on with our daily life, and down the road some way you see the behavior, because through your behavior it will then stem and you will see, you know what, something must be wrong. But the silent one, it's like pressure or these things that just, or cholesterol that sometimes, it just hit you one day. And to me, the silent one is those people who will come in front of you and smile, hi, good morning, and they're so happy, and they check on you, you're okay, and it's a killer.
Thank you. So when we hear the topic wounds we don't see, one can admit that, you know what, it's literally wounds you can't see. You can't really see it from the naked eye. And I'm glad that you both mentioned that, because we know bullying takes a lot of forms. And so I want to know, why do you think bullying, especially emotionally and or verbally, is still so often dismissed or minimized? Why do you think this is often dismissed or minimized, given the fact that it takes different forms emotionally and also verbally, right? And we have a lot of people who might not know that bullying takes a lot of form. Why do you think that this type of bullying is minimized or dismissed?
Miss, for sure. I think it's because the case with a lot of people is that they don't believe what they can't see. So if they don't see bruises, if they don't see someone physically hitting you, if they don't see marks on you, is it really bullying? That's what they're probably thinking to themselves. And I definitely agree with what Miss Afian mentioned earlier, that, in our culture, silence is definitely something that we learn along the way. But especially in Belize and other Caribbean countries, when we were younger, we may have experienced, sticks and stones, that concept of sticks and stones, and you're kind of taught, or it's kind of normalized that, teasing is fair game, teasing is normal. But, teasing and the harsh jokes can really affect someone's mental health. And I recently spoke to a student here at my internship today, actually, about how comments about someone's body, you don't know that person's mentality, for example. And so, like, comments that you might take as a lighthearted joke, you don't know how that is affecting them. You don't know if they're suffering from body dysmorphia. You don't know if they're struggling with their self-esteem. And so while it may be a lighthearted joke to you, you're just playing that as your friend, they might be affected after all behind closed doors. Maybe they don't want to disclose that to you in that moment. And so I definitely think it's normalized that, even with the nicknames, there's nicknames that you get a lot when you're younger. I recently saw on TikTok, actually, this one girl from Trinidad. She said that when she was younger, she was on the slimmer side out of all of her siblings. And so her childhood nickname was Bones, because of how skinny she was. And to this day, they still call her Bones. And she seems to be taking it as a joke as well. But she did talk a lot about how it affected her when she was going through puberty, when she was, amongst her friends in high school, because these things do follow you. Even if, like Ms. Afian said, it's not present at that moment, it creeps up, and sometimes with that just at the back of your head. Just people not being able to really see that, they don't believe it.
See, why do you think bullying, especially emotionally or verbal, are oftentimes dismissed or minimized?
We are taught to be tough. They tell us, be tough, be strong. Don't worry about what nobody has to say. Don't have a thin skin. Sweet, put that aside. We are taught to let these things be placed in a quiet area. So in this situation, when it comes to bullying, those things like emotional, I have people, you like catch feelings, it's hard for people sometimes to express themselves, especially to people who don't understand you. And that's why sometimes people prefer to just leave it at that. Because then why will I tell somebody something, and when they respond, it's in a way that, is not conducive, like it's not something that you appreciate. And many times, like what Julie said, just explain it again, and I did mention it earlier, that we grow up and some of these things we see it as normal. So this whole new topic of bullying, people still don't believe it. They still don't believe it. They still just believe it's a physical thing. They don't believe that the verbal and the emotional is there. So I think awareness is another issue. And people are not aware of the intensity when it comes to bullying.
Good. I'm glad you said that because oftentimes, because of the way we're cultured, because of the way we're socialized, and the first place that we are socialized is within our own personal household. And so when we're taught all these things, we go into the society and we engage in bullying without even realize that it's impactful on somebody's emotional well-being. And we make it so easy. Like like both of you have mentioned in your childhood, that's where you're that's the first place you're bullied, and it's normalized. And so my next question would be, given the fact that we know all this exists, what are some misconceptions people have about what bullying actually is, and who does it affect?
For sure, Miss, aside from what we were talking about, that, bullying is not only physical. I think a lot of the situations that happens too is we have persons who engage in some type of humiliation, whether it's like we talked about teasing, but that could also come in forms of just laughing at someone being teased. It could be like, just targeting. Let's say you have a friend and they're very passionate about something that they care about and they're sharing that with you, making fun of them for liking something that maybe you're not familiar with. And so it seems odd to you, but it's something that they enjoy. You making fun of that, you causing a scene, you just basically telling them that's not important, you're bullying them. And I feel like a lot of people do not think about the fact that anyone can be bullied, as we talked about earlier. It's universal. It happens to a lot of people, to most people. It really does not matter what culture you're from. Yes, we know that some persons are, more susceptible to being more bullied than others, but it does happen across all cultures. So, for example, a lot of people, especially working at a school now, I see it. There's misconceptions about students who are top students in terms of academics. So, like, they make straight A's. They're on all these sports teams, they do all these extracurricular activities, they do all this stuff. They won't get bullied, they're popular. But at the end of the day, we know as adults looking in, we know that's not the case. They can be getting bullied by their friends, as we talked about. It comes in forms of teasing, humiliation. There's also the very controversial thought about them being bullied by adults, which we know that can also come in terms of, putting them down, tearing their dreams down as well. And so it really can happen to anyone. We know also, and what I've seen personally, I'm not sure if you guys see this as well, tend to when we have students here who are a little more outspoken, so they are always the one volunteering to answer questions, they're the ones volunteering to do presentations, who step more so outside of their comfort zone. We know that, this is a really good characteristic to have. It helps you in the long run, but a lot of people, especially when that's not normal for them, they make fun of it because they say, oh, well, you're trying to be the teacher's pet. You're trying to be seen. There's all these different comments that they make about them that can really just, diminish them and put them down also. But like I talked about earlier as well, even in adults, we have adults that can face bullying as well. So like in the workplace, for example, there's always a hierarchy. A lot of times there's always hierarchies where you go, and oftentimes you would feel that bullying coming from persons who, I guess you can say, systemically are above you. You can feel that in terms of the work that they trust you with, or what they think you're capable of, what they voice to you and your staff members. And so it does not only happen to children, like you mentioned, Safina, it happens to all of us, and it happens in so much forms. But a lot of people assume that because it's not physical, that it's truly not happening.
Afe, what do you think are some of the misconceptions that people have about bullying, and what bullying is, and who does it actually affect?
I think that some people don't know that, they don't believe and that bullying actually it's something that could be a cycle, and it could be something that you could pass on to, from one person to another. Some people believe that some of them believe that they learn it outside, and sometimes it's right from within the homes that they are learning these things. some of these children inherit that, and adults inherit those things, and that's a misconception because they believe, oh, that's not learned, that's not something that could be learned, and it could be learned. All right, because then the examples that you show, the way that you behave sometimes towards people with your kids, mimicking people or maybe mentioning something when somebody passed by or so forth. Some people have a misconception that, oh, children cannot pick up these things, and some they pick it up and they take it into adulthood. They take it throughout their life, and it's not something that's corrected, and they don't believe that they can correct those situations, because if you don't believe in something, then you don't move towards making a change towards it, And bullying affect not only an individual, but even the people around them. Because then if you have someone around you who are being bullied, I mean, it takes a lot from your body. Bullying takes a lot from you. So it doesn't only affect the person that is being bullied, but it affect the persons who are dear to them as well. And sometimes even their own peers and the people who are around them. So people in the environment get affected by people who are being bullied. And bullies become, when you are bullied, sometimes you become the bully too. So like I said, it's a cycle. And the misconception is it's not something that is real. I don't think people think that it's something that is real. They believe that, oh, children are not tough today. You are raising children to be soft. They are not, they don't think that they're tough. And then they move into adulthood. And they think it's only to boys. Many times these things happen too. And females get bullied a lot. And it moves on, as I said, sometimes from childhood into relationships and all of these things. It becomes a cycle. So not having that belief on its own and not believing in bullying is matter of a big deal, and it's part of the misconception that it's not even real.
Thank you very much. And that is something very important for our audience looking to be aware of, that what you both said, bullying affects, in a nutshell, every single person, right? It doesn't just affect the person being bullied, but it affects the person around the person at the receiving end of the bullying tactic. And if we're not aware of the different misconceptions that exist out there, then I'm afraid that we eventually will become contributors, even if it's by being a bystander, to the negative impact of bullying that bullying would have on the society. And we want our audience to understand that bullying is just not teasing, right? It's something real. It happens every single day. Now, given the fact that you both work in an environment where you're working with children and you're working within very important capacity, and you're able to see certain things every single day, what are some signs that a child may be experiencing bullying from your perspective, and where you stand right now, where you work currently?
I definitely think there's different levels to it. So there's the more obvious signs versus the more subtle signs. So the obvious ones to me that I see here often would be a decline in academics. So you could have students who typically get good grades and their grades start slipping. And, we have quarters here, the semesters, and then we would check in with them. But if it's a student that we know personally that always gets good grades and that just suddenly stops, is definitely something to look into. Also, just having our students being more withdrawn or self-isolating. So they don't really would be engaging in the activities that they usually would. So they wouldn't be doing sports as much or hanging out with their friends as much. You'll see at lunch, they'll sit by themselves. They don't want to be with the crowd. That also becomes alarming as well, especially when we have certain students who are very social. They're social butterflies, and they make a sudden change like that. It's something we look into. Also, the more subtle stuff, I guess you can see as well, anxiety before coming to school. So I actually experienced recently a parent reaching out to me of a student refusing to get out of the car. They are younger they're from the younger set, but refused to get out of the car every morning for a week straight. And that's kind of what put that student on our radar, and we started to see them. But just stuff like that, just with the phones are so common, and they live on their phones these days. They become very secretive as well with their devices or just their social life or within their families. I know with myself, when I was in high school, I've always been very close with my mom. But when I was going through my own things in terms of bullying, I did not want her to know at all. So I became very secretive. I would not really tell her much about what's going on. So we went from being very open to each other to me being closed off, and that definitely alarmed her. So that's just kind of things that we can see happening a lot within the school system here as well. And I do work at a school here in Florida, but there is a lot of similarities to what the students are experiencing here, versus like what I know I experienced when I was going to school, what I know my siblings have experienced with them going to school, friends and their children as well. So I guess because that is, what we said, it's a universal issue, there is that similarities as well, that they may be experiencing these same signs.
Afine, what do you think are some of the signs that a child may be experiencing bullying? I know Julissa works internationally and you work in Belize. And despite the fact that you might be working in the same setting, it's still a bit different given the fact that we have very different cultural practices and experiences. What would you say are some of the signs that a child may be experiencing bullying from the Belizean, not only a vice principal, but as an up-and-coming social worker? What are your perspective and experiences on the signs that a child may be experiencing bullying?
One of the signs I'm seeing is aggression. Children becoming very aggressive towards others. The rough play. There are children who during play you'll see them sometimes hitting people in their head. They're doing, they play very rough. That is also a sign, because sometimes these children are expressing themselves in those ways. And another one is hygiene. I have seen where hygiene is an issue. I actually experienced that more than once. It is a very sad situation, but sometimes when you see children just leaving themselves and not taking care of themselves, is because of people telling them things and they don't feel like they're good enough. So they start to not take care of their themselves, with their hygiene and keeping clean and so forth. So that is an issue. Withdrawal, as you said, is also an issue. And sometimes you even see children who all of a sudden become overjoyed too. So you need to wonder like what's going on there. Sometimes you need to dig in to see what's actually happening. So whenever you see a change, because there are many changes that is obvious, and there are some that is also not so obvious and also not easy to pick up on. But like I said, aggression is one. A lack of proper hygiene is another. Not wanting to eat. I'm watching a situation right now, and where a child, I don't want to eat, or they withdraw, or they don't want to eat at the cafeteria. I don't want to go there, and then they refuse to eat even if I get the food. Not hungry, and believe me, sometimes they are hungry. When you dig and realize it's because something is going on with them, even if it's not at school, it could be at home. They are being tortured by somebody, So those are some of the things that I see when students are being bullied.
Thank you. And I'm sure that the audience are going to benefit from understanding those signs. Given the fact that we know the signs of bullying and what a child might be experiencing, how does bullying, from your perspective, how does bullying impact a person's mental health, their self-esteem, and also their ability to trust others?
For me, what I think definitely people can expect to see is that level of anxiety and depression going up. So I know I mentioned, the anxiety of the student not wanting to come out of the car, but just anxiety in general about being around the persons that they're experiencing bullying from, just being in settings. I have some students here who don't necessarily like crowds anymore because of what they've went through. Also, depression, and also you mentioned self-esteem. It kind of it could affect their view of themselves. So their self-perception is affected as well. They start to believe the things they're hearing from these bullies, and what they're being told about themselves, the negative thoughts about themselves go up. So a lot of times, especially with the age group I work with, the big thing to talk about is appearances, because beauty standards keep changing. They change as the time goes on, and so if you're not following them, and if you're not looking like how all the models look on Instagram or on TikTok, and if you're not really looking like what the beauty standards is said at this time, they make fun of you. And so a lot of time, especially with my girls as well, they start having really low self-esteem. They start believing the things that they're hearing about themselves, and so it definitely affects them in terms of that. With their trust as well, I feel like that is affected, because with them being bullied, it kind of shapes how they feel about their safety. So if they're in an environment where they feel like they're no longer safe emotionally, it could be because they're being bullied. It could be because no one is standing up for them. And these connections that they've built, and a lot of times one of the misconceptions we talked about as well, I'm not sure if I mentioned it, but a lot of times the bullying happens from their friends. So like I said, it comes in forms of teasing. But now looking in, if I'm being bullied and this person that's constantly bullying me is my friend, now I start to wonder about friendships in general. Can I trust my friends? Can I trust myself to, feel safe and comfortable around these people I call my friends and my loved ones? They're making fun of me. They're making fun of the things that I like. And it starts to have them questioning if what they thought about having friendships and these relationships is what they originally thought. Like, is it that this is good for me, or should I be afraid of forming new ones, because will they bully me as well? Will the adults in my life protect me? I don't feel protected right now. And so they start having all of these questions go through their heads. And that is why they start to become a little more withdrawn and self-isolate, because now they do not know who to trust. They don't know who to trust. And the people they thought were supposed to be there for them, a lot of the times, they are the one contributing to these bullying episodes and stuff like that.
Thank you, Julissa. Afin, what about you? How does bullying impact a person's mental health, their self-esteem, and their ability to trust others?
Well, that is something, people internalize these things. And what happens is it causes a break within the person. And breakage as a human is a mental trauma in itself. So it makes people become fearful, very fearful of society, very fearful of the people who they interact with. They lack trust in others and in themselves as well. Because remember now, when somebody is being bullied, they start to put that inside. It's like they store it. And that part of the brain then will always signal them in that flight mode. And so it leads to anxiety, depression. Your emotion cannot stabilize. All of these things happens when people are being bullied. A lack of self-confidence, not be able to stand out there and be able to express yourself, that is also an issue. So it's deep. It's deep, and it's a wound that sometimes is hard to heal. It's hard to heal. It's like a bed sore. And that if you have ever seen anyone with such thing as a bed sore, you'll know how painful it is for someone who either grew up being bullied or is being bullied at a presently. It's a tough thing. Because when you have low self-esteem, you lack self-confidence, you lack a lot of things within you, all right? You don't know who you are. You get lost as to who am I? You start questioning yourself. Am I good enough? Do I fit here, like what Miss was talking about? Julissa said it. And then that whole thing about fitting. So, and it's in today's society, it's even worse. It's even worse. So a lack of trust can lead to a lot of things. It could lead to a lack of not loving yourself, not loving who you are. And if you can't love yourself, definitely you are not able to love people around you. So it's a widespread situation. And like we mentioned before, if you think that it's only the person being bullied, everybody gets that. And then it becomes a cycle, as I said. And so it's your self-esteem, your self-worth. When that means nothing, then I believe that for many, life means nothing. And sometimes they turn into alcoholism when they grow up. People, they move and alcohol become their savior and they believe it saves them from a lot of things. So it's one thing to the other, one thing to the other.
You know, you've made some very important point. And what you've just explained a minute ago is the exact definition of, or the signs of wounds you don't see, and how impactful those things are to a human being. Now, sometimes the challenges that we go through, and when we talk about bullying, there are times we think that bullying is something that only children experience, right? And you've both mentioned before that as time progresses, as you develop and you become adults, right? Sometimes the bullies in those early age become adults who bully. And it brings us to another question. There are times when adults unintentionally say things like, just toughen up, or ignore it. So what kind of harm does that response cause? Because we want to keep in mind that bullying does not only occur in childhood. So when an adult is telling another person to toughen up and to just ignore their experiences with bullying, what kind of harm do you think that could cause?
For me, Miss, I think saying things like toughen up kind of tells persons your feelings don't matter here. Like Ms. Afian mentioned, growing up in the society that we did, we were taught to have tough, thicker skin. We were always told, you cannot be thin-skinned in this world because, it's going to eat you up and spit you out and all the different things that we heard. But I feel like it also increases shame in persons as well, because instead of building on, their strengths and their resilience and stuff like that, it's telling them, I know this is happening to you, but you need to worry about other things. You need to hide this pain. And that's what tends to happen. They internalize it. They don't deal with it. And it becomes a bigger issue, like you guys mentioned before. And so this is harmful to their emotional development. They are not being taught that they can come to people. They are not being taught that they can come to others for help when they're in distress. They're being taught that, you just have to face it. You have to take it. You have to swallow it. Or some of the kids say these days, you just have to eat it and you have to keep it down. And it just damages trust, like we talked about, the connections that we have. Things like this, being told, toughen up. I would not want to be told that if I came to someone about anything and their response was toughen up. I would be taken aback. And I would be like, okay, well, now I know I can't tell you anything else again. And does it make sense for me to tell anyone else if this is the response I'm going to get? It tells people this, and it really affects them emotionally. And a lot of times when persons tell you to toughen up, they don't think that's what they're doing. They think they're doing you a favor by telling you to have thick skin. And that is not the case at all. Not in my opinion, at least.
Thank you very much, Lisa. Afin?
I think the first word that comes when, is promotion. You're actually promoting bullying when you do those things. Because by telling somebody to toughen up, sometimes people don't even listen and they're not listening. And the first thing they come in, you need to be tough. They're not even listening to actually what the person is telling them. So you're promoting bullying. It's like, it's okay. It's okay for someone to bully you. And the thing is, you as an individual in that situation, you start to feel like it's okay. So what do you do then? It's a promotion, right? So you You think it's okay, and so it's okay for you to do it to somebody too, because they can be tough. It's fine. Just let it be. Just part of our culture, and it affects me because sometimes people don't want to look out for professional help, which is another situation in our country, because you look for professional help, then you're crazy, right? Quote unquote, because that's what they say in our Belizean context. You're crazy. When you are going to a psychiatrist, or you're going to seek a counseling, what is wrong? You're crazy. Sometimes it's not even that going through so much. And then I said, why you going there? You don't need to do that. You just need to make sure that you beat up. And then they play the God game too. Pray, do this, do that. It's fine to do all those things, but sometimes you need somebody to listen to you. So by just putting those things aside, you are promoting bullying.
So in a lot of sense, it become a little bit dismissive of somebody's experience, right? And we want our audience to know that it's okay to seek help and to understand that telling somebody to toughen up is also a misconception, right? And if we want to be able to help, we have to also become change agents and recognize how we contribute to the issues of bullying within our community. Now, keeping those things in mind, how important do you think, or how important is it for the different institutions to address emotional and psychological bullying, and not just the physical aggression? Because if you notice, the evidence or the research teaches us that the emotional and psychological wounds, they last way longer than the physical wounds. So how important is it for the different institutions that exist to address emotional and psychological bullying? How important is that?
Miss, I think is very, very important. And I feel like it just has a lot to do with what we discussed earlier about the trust, especially on that institutional level, in terms of us working at a school, for example. I work at a school. It would be very detrimental to the school culture here among the students, and also the connection between the family and the staff here, if we did not have interventions for cases of bullying, because parents want to know that they can trust the people they have, their students and their children around. And if we are not equipped to acknowledge the fact that emotional and psychological bullying happens daily, and if we do not take steps to intervene and to step in and try to put a pause to that, or just assist in terms of protecting our students, we need to be able to offer support, and we need to let them know that they can trust us, because like you mentioned, it does have long-term effects. It can cause harm down the line. And like you guys talked about before, with it being a cycle, we need to make sure that we are doing our part to prevent it as much as possible, because we're not here to promote bullying, as mentioned before, as Ms. Afian mentioned. We need to have policies in place. We need to make sure that we have, all these things we have procedures. For us, for example, we have parents and students sign agreements at the beginning of the school year, or if they're new enrollments, about our policies. And in our policies, we talk about the steps we take if we have cases of bullying. If your student is the person doing the bullying, if your student is being bullied, we have things in place to address that, because we want you to know that your student is safe here, and you can trust your student with us, because that is what we're here for. We're all here to ensure that their development, and as they grow, they're growing into being the best persons they can be. But we understand that life is real, and as we said, this is a universal issue. So we just want to make sure that these institutions know what to expect, and that they have things in place to address them, because it is a very, very dangerous playing field if they do not address them, and if they just turn a blind eye.
Afian, how important is it for the different institutions that exist to address emotional and the psychological aspects of bullying?
I think that it is very, very important, because it also helps to shape your institution in itself, because if you have people who are not comfortable in their setting, it affects the way how the daily runnings of the institution. I must say though, I must say that, you know, when a child is being bullied and they're not heard, it brings out a lot of things that you don't really want in them, and it lowers the level of productivity. So as an institution in our country, it is very sad that in the primary schools, they don't hear much about having a counselor in the schools. And that in itself is an issue, because the root, to me, the root of many things is from the younger generation, like from very small, from infant one coming up. So it is important that they start to look into having even a social worker in in school, because for children to be able to express themselves and for healing to take place at an earlier stage. So institutions must look into that, and also with adults, because even in our setting as teachers, there are teachers who sometimes face bullying, and you don't get much out of those teachers if they are facing these type of things, because having them coming to work and feeling low, I mean, how much can you produce when you're not even feeling good about yourself? You don't want to be at, you don't feel that you belong somewhere. It lowers the level of productivity. You don't get much. Getting into a happy place makes you a happy person. And sometimes it helps you to heal when you are in an institution where you are understood, where people understand, you know, what you are going through. So it is very, very, very vital. It's very vital.
Thank you both. Julissa said something, brought up said a very important term, policy. And Afid mentioned counselors in the different schools. And so those are two important steps that the different institution can take in implementing in the system to work against bullying within our society, right? Because in school, in one end, we have counselors who can impart certain knowledge and start towards working on the healing process, or even educating students who later are going to become leaders of our country, right? And then you have the policies that could be implemented, and the same counselors or even teachers on the ground can eventually bring those policies into practice. So those are two very important points. One more thing that I want to ask is, what do you think for someone who is experiencing bullying, what are some first steps towards healing or reclaiming their confidence? What are some steps that they can take towards healing and reclaiming their confidence?
Miss, for me, I think definitely one of the very, very first steps should probably just be acknowledging the fact that, you know, you're getting bullied. Once you acknowledge that fact, you can start making an action plan. And so, like we mentioned before, one of the effects or warning signs is the negative self-conception. So being kind to ourselves and, you know, just trying to practice self-compassion is very, very important for persons experiencing bullying, you know, whether that be words of affirmation, you know, having positive thoughts, practicing telling yourself positive things about yourself, trying to combat, you know, what you've heard from bullies that are attacking you. Also, you know, I know connection is very important. It might be hard for persons who are experiencing bullying in close environments. So like if they're in school and these are people that they always have to be around, it might be a little difficult if they're seeing these people every day. But leaning into the connections we have that do serve us well, like, you know, some people are very, very close with their parents, some are close with friends, some are close with teachers. Leaning into those connections and getting that support from people, sometimes just having that extra, you know, that extra body to be able to be like a soundboard, talk to them. They can also offer you some advice. They can help you with, you know, building your self-confidence and stuff like that. That is very, very important. I know in one of our lectures, you mentioned self-care for social workers, but I think it's also important for persons experiencing bullying to journal, being able to write down, what they're feeling. Because like Ms. Asian said, sometimes bullying affects the way they're able to express themselves. And so being able to get that out of their system and say what they're feeling, even if it's hard to say verbally, is very, very important as well to consider when you're trying to heal from bullying.
Afin?
For me, I believe like I will agree with Jaleesa. First, you as an individual, you have to know where you're at. Your environment plays a role. Changing that would help, because you don't want to be around people who don't understand you, because that could be very harmful. You need to know how to be learning how to express yourself. Like, how do I express myself? To whom do I express myself? Another thing is getting that professional help if you are able to. So don't feel that there is nowhere to go. Like, having that feeling is not a good one. So getting away from that and seeking professional help is also a good thing, and can be able to change the mindset, as changing your mindset is important. You don't want to be stable when it comes to mind, like a stable mindset, have one way of thinking and one way of seeing things. So starting from you, looking at evaluating your environment, see the things that you entertain, because sometimes as an individual, you entertain a lot of negativity too, and that really affects your being. Knowing the importance of energy, a lot of people don't understand energy, and we collect energy and we pass energy. So knowing what kind of energy is within your being, what energy are running within your system, being self-aware about that is very paramount, because we carry these things, and these things builds us. And our instinct is important, because a lot of people don't study their instinct, and they don't let their instinct assist them in doing justice to them being comfortable humans. So our instinct is one that you would want to study. Sometimes things come within your soul and tells you, probably don't do this, or this is not right. And so studying your bodily energy and knowing and giving your instinct credit is important.
Thank you. Given the fact that you're both professionals within the school system, this means that you have an opportunity to shape future leaders of, let's say, the entire world, because we don't know where the individuals are going to end up in this world that you're imparting knowledge to. What conversation should we be having in schools, in the homes, about empathy, kindness, and digital responsibility? Because you see, while you have these kids that you're working with in the schools, you're also interacting with their family. So you somewhat have a sense of what's going on within those homes. So based on what you know, what are the conversations, and I'm going to repeat the question, what are the conversations should we be having in schools, at homes, about empathy, kindness, and digital responsibility? Because we know now that the things that are happening online is also very important. And a lot of bullying takes place behind the keyboard, right? So what are some of the conversations that we should start having in terms of those three important things: empathy, kindness, and digital responsibility?
For sure, Miss. I think one of the most important conversations we should have, especially in the schools, like you said, is teaching the kids the power they hold and the impact they have on their peers and on the persons around them. Teaching them how much power they hold in the words that they say, in the actions that they do, whether it's online or in person. So, for example, when we talk about empathy and kindness, I think it's very, very important to talk to the children about trying to spread this as much as they can, because they never know if just one kind word from them can make someone's day. If it can just be the last something that that person needed to be lifted that day. And unfortunately, we know that bullying can, especially cyberbullying, can result in a lot of extreme and unfortunate results in terms of, we have unfortunate kids who commit suicide or persons who commit suicide. They never know if them engaging in bullying could be that person's 13th reason, as a lot of people say after that popular show, 13 Reasons Why. I hear it a lot amongst the kids. They never know if, they can save someone by being kind and having a little bit of empathy. And so I think it's important to teach the kids how to be empathetic, because a lot of times they assume that being kind and being nice is being soft, is just not beneficial to them. But I think it's very important for us to teach them that they hold a lot of power. And in terms of their digital responsibility, like you said, social media obviously is a very, very big thing now, and it's kind of the norm. And so likewise, just teaching them like their actions is very, very important to watch, because one wrong post, one wrong meme, if you share something, a picture, a video about someone, can result in so much extremities, because your digital footprint almost never disappears. And so it's an ongoing issue. I recently had two friends, boys, come to me, and I know both boys and girls go through this, but I more so see girls come to us. They're more open about coming to us. I had two boys come to me recently. One of them was very upset with his friend because his friend took an embarrassing picture of him and refused to delete it. And this young man was in tears. He was so very upset about this. And I asked him, I was like, I wasn't familiar with them. I just so happened to be in the room at that time, and he came to me and he was so upset. And I was like, but is he not your friend? I asked the friend, can you please delete the phone of him? He's obviously very upset about it. And I asked him why he was so upset, and he says he shares pictures like this all the time in our group chats, in our sports group chats, and they make fun of me and about my weight, and they paste my face on these very embarrassing, they make stickers out of me, and I don't like it. And so I think in that moment, the other young man, seeing his friend break down like that, really understood how affected he was by the humiliation that his friend was facing. He thought it was innocent. He thought it was just lighthearted, and it was not. And so that is, to me, a good example of how, although it was within their friend group, sharing things like that on social media, so many schools, so many kids have access. They just have to do one search and they can see it, and it can skyrocket from there. So I think it's very, very important for us to teach them about the impact they can have on each other, and that they can use it for good. They do not have to use it to promote bullying. They do not have to use it to humiliate each other. They can use it to spread kindness, to instead of being that person's 13th reason, give them at least one reason to be happy today. Give them a reason to want to be here.
Those are some really good points, Julissa. Thank you. Afi, what conversation should we be having in schools, homes, about empathy, kindness, and digital responsibility?
I would say the first thing that we need to do is to be role models. I mean, model these things, because in schools, we explain, and teachers know that there's something called a hidden curriculum. So there are things that you do, like children see these things. And sometimes you may be having a conversation with another colleague, and you children are watching you, they're hearing you, and they're looking at your body language too. So you show them how to behave. At school, a lot of children today, the funny thing is with technology, children believe that I recently had an issue with a child, giving a child a hug for his birthday, and that child felt that others started teasing the child about relationship. And then I realized, and I said, we look at things and we are not aware, because certain studies, I think, are outdated. With technology now, things are changing because children are learning things on the internet. Parents don't really monitor them to know what they are doing. And so they watch these little clips and memes about things, and then they put it into their daily life. So you can't tell somebody, "Oh, I love you." That was a bit touching to me, because a child hug a child first, we're not telling him, "I love you," and this thing became a whole relationship thing, and all of that, and they do this and they do that. But the thing is, this child get that at home, that child gets hugged, that child is being told that they are loved. So the child spreads that. So we have to be careful of what we teach, or what we teach our children in the home. We must, and I don't think much about love is being taught, because people today don't really understand what to love and how to show compassion. You have to be able to show compassion to people. And a lot of people don't know how to show empathy. They don't know how to empathize with others. They don't have that idea. So if we are able to impart that knowledge to others, for them to know how to empathize, because empathy takes people a long way. When you're able to empathize rather than sympathize with someone, it takes them a long, long way, just for them to understand. I know what you're going through. I understand what you are going through. So I would say that modeling, be careful of what you model to your children, because you cause these things. Nobody in this world was born bad. Nobody was born a bully. They learned that, and they learn it from those people close to them. They are very observant, and our children are sponges. So what you give them and what you show to them, the way you respond to them, yet listening to them, is one that we must understand and say, you know what, if model the right thing to these kids.
Thank you very much, ladies. And I want to express my sincere gratitude to the both of you for joining us today. And we can end with those important messages that we have to be able to educate. We have to impart the knowledge about bullying, and not just the physical implications of how impactful it's going to be on somebody's well-being, but also the emotional and psychological effects of bullying on an individual. We know that bullying does not occur within teens or among children. We know that it occurs amongst adults as well. And we want to be able to continue to educate our community about the hidden wounds of bullying, of what we don't see. And so I want to say thank you very much for joining us on this podcast. And I hope that we could continue the conversation outside of just the podcast, and continue to educate every single person that we come across, especially for the both of you working within such professional settings that you are currently. So thank you very much. And I'll say let's sign off.